Okay, we'll move it forward to 0.08 seconds. And here we have class management and voice projection. This was a theme used at the beginning of the session to gather all of the participants around to explain the purpose of the session. Mazzano and Mazzano 2003 documented that current studies have shown that classroom management has the biggest effect on students' attainment and achievement. If this session was to be taught again, more detail of the session would have been explained. Voice projection was also used during the instruction to ensure that everybody could hear. If we then move forward to 0.23, friendly communication was used. This was used effectively at the start of the lesson. This was a strength of mine because I felt by communicating in a friendly manner, this will encourage the students to learn more effectively. Webster 2010 stated that teachers' communication has a massive impact on students' ability to become motivated and learn. If we move forward to 0.55, differentiation and classroom management was used. This was used while planning and setting up the session, as there was not a given number of pupils arriving to the lesson today. Once we had got going, the equipment needed to be adjusted. However, a strength of this was my classroom management, where the equipment had been set up prior to the lesson to save time. Clark 2007 proposed this as a positive for the classroom. As you see here at 1 minute 19, assessment for learning through peer assessment was used. This was used for certain individuals throughout the session to assess their learning. This was used by the non-participants filling out a SWOT analysis. Leach 2003 further explained that this method can lead to further individual development by identifying their strengths and weaknesses. If we move on to 2 minutes 13, this was when questioning and physical literacy was used. Questioning the learner's knowledge and understanding through Bloom taxonomy, low-level thinking questions of what part of the foot was used. Pearson and Webb 2008 explained that those particular kind of questions are used to introduce appropriate information for the learners to learn certain techniques to put into practice. A strength of this teacher technique is more than one person answer the question. This shows good knowledge and understanding of the sport, which interprets physical literacy, which shows that they are physical literate. Bill and Co. 2014 states that an individual who is physically literate demonstrates their understanding of different sports and understands the value of physical education. If we look at 2 minutes 28, this is when differentiation and planning came in. Throughout planning this session, it was interpreted that the drills will become harder throughout by adding certain rules and differentiating lessons to suit all individual needs. Smith 2005 states that this is an important aspect of a teacher, being able to differentiate to cater all needs. If we then move forward to 3 minutes 38, this session was differentiated further. This was a weakness because the session was not challenging enough for this ability. Therefore, if this session was to be taken again, it would be differentiated further by adding more than one person to the middle. Grant and Long 2009 further explained that taking your weakness and reflecting upon it for the next lesson will ensure a better lesson. Making decisions on the spot during a lesson differentiate it to cater for all individual needs. This will improve yourself as a better teacher. If we now look at 4 minutes 10 seconds, good classroom management and voice projection was used. This is because once I had spoken and projected my voice so everybody could hear me and get them to gather around. This was a strength as everybody listened to the instructions that were given. However, a weakness of this was I started speaking and asking questions before everybody had gathered around. This was a good use of questioning to check the learner's learning. If we then move on to 4 minutes 48, this was then good classroom management again. When splitting the class into 2 different groups, this should have been done by myself rather than asking the pupils to organise themselves. This is because Grout and Long 2009 state that this can cause disagreements between class members and become very unfair groups. Grout and Long 2009 documented that splitting into equal groups when considering their different abilities and strengths will work more effectively. If we then move on to 5 minutes 20 seconds, you'll see here that we've moved on to a new task. A weakness here is that there is no demonstration. Although there were clear instructions, it would have been more effective if there was demonstration of the new activity. Capel 2004 further explained that there were several reasons for demonstrations. However, in this case, a demonstration should have been used to introduce a new activity and to give the students the opportunity to ask well-structured questions. If we then go back to 5 minutes 24 seconds, negative feedback should have been used. This was another weakness because during the session it should have been pointed out when Neve had her hands in her pockets. This shows poor attitude towards learning. Capel and Whitehouse 2013 proposed that all students should have a positive attitude to learning within a PE lesson. If this situation was to arise again in a lesson, I would address this immediately. If we then look at 5 minutes 38, at this point this was a positive praise to Terry here. However, it could have been expanded onto what Terry had done well. This is because Capel and Whitehouse 2004 further suggest that praise needs to be supportive, encouraging and positive. Otherwise the praise will not be valued. If we then move forward to 9 minutes 10 seconds, communication and voice projection was then used again. These two teacher techniques were used at this point to explain clearly the next activity. The reasoning for the voice projection is that I was moving equipment and walking around, therefore projecting my voice was necessary to ensure that all participants could understand the instructions clearly. Moore 2014 stated that voice projection improves the overall delivery of a lesson. If we skip forward to 11 minutes, good verbal communication was used throughout this whole task. Verbal communication was used to encourage participants to keep going and to ensure that they are completing the task correctly. This was a strength of mine. This shows that I have a positive attitude towards the learning. Brackney 2008 further explained that current research suggests that teachers with positive attitude towards learning are more likely to have a better insight into different teaching strategies. If we move forward to 16 minutes, questioning the learner's understanding and praise at the end of the session. Gathering all participants together to question their learning and their understanding of different components covered within today's lesson. Praising the students on how well they worked during the session today will leave them with a positive mindset and will encourage them to become more motivated for the next session. Newsom 2012 discussed the importance of summarising the key points of the lesson at the end of the lesson. If you then see here at 16 minutes 20, individual progression and positive and negative feedback was used. This was when at the end of the session both non-participators gathered together who they chose to do their SWOT analysis on during the session. They gave them effective feedback including strengths and areas of improvement. This was definitely something that worked well within my lesson and would definitely be something that I would use again within the future. It allows the non-participants to show their knowledge and understanding of the subject area even though they are not participating. Smith 2010 further expressed that this is one of the most effective ways to progress on pupils' performance in class.